Welcome, I'm Zach Brewer with Wheatstone. Today we're going to be showing you how to clean a Penny and Giles 3000 series motorized fader found on some of our various control surfaces here at Wheatstone. To start with, you can generally tell the fader needs cleaning. You run the fader up and down and you can just feel some grittiness in there. It just doesn't feel smooth and clean. So we got to start by taking the fader out of the panel. So the first step we're going to do is remove the fader knob. That just pops right off. Set this off to the side. Next we want to go to the back and unplug the fader we're working with. Once you trace the wires down, you actually want to grab the JST on the sides and do a rocking motion back and forth to release the JST. If you pull the fader wires, not the actual JST plug, it is possible to damage or rip the wires out. And we're going to turn this around, use one hand to hold the module in place and the fader, and then just remove the two screws holding that fader into the module. Take the screws out, set them off to the side. There we go. Now the fader is loose. You can just pull it right out from the back of the panel. So here we have a Penny and Giles 3000 series motorized fader pulled out of the module. First thing we want to do, the motor is attached to this top bar going across here, so we want to loosen that whole bar off the top. You're going to grab a 1/4 inch nut driver and remove these two threaded standoffs. There's one, set it off to the side. Now the one down here on the bottom also has a pulley on it for the belt. So you want to be careful as you remove this one to keep that in mind and bring that pulley with it. You don't want that guy rolling across your floor anywhere. Set that off to the side. Now you can see we have the fader bar completely loose and movable from the fader. We're not actually going to worry about taking this off because you can't get it above the fader arm due to this bracket on it that they have to mount the belt to. And as you can see on the back, the screw that actually holds that bracket onto the fader arm has what looks to be a spot of JB Weld type substance on it, so we don't want to break this screw free. So you're able to move this bar off to the side and move it around to get it out of your way, just like so. So the next step is the end with the wires coming out, which was behind the motor. We want to take this end cap off so we can slide the inside card out for cleaning. So as you hold your fader, you take these screws out one at a time. Get this bottom one out, set it off to the side. Now as you take this top screw out, you want to make sure you hold the fader somewhat vertical. There is a brass square nut in there that will fall out. So once we have the screw out, we take the metal plate with it. So here you can see the brass nut in its recessed area, and if you do turn it upside down, it's no big deal. You can just slide it back in, but there's that brass nut right there. So you take this end cap off by gently rocking it back and forth. I'm going to go ahead and put that brass nut back in its recessed area for safekeeping, and then set this whole end plate off to the side for now. Now the next step is this half moon-shaped bar across the top of the fader slides right out. A little bit of pulling, it comes out. We're going to set that off to the side for now. Now you can see on the end of the shaft we've got two bushings. Take note in which ones they are and how they go on. The first one you're going to pull off is a thicker, spongier bushing, more foam, and the second one you're going to pull off is a thinner, more of a hard rubber bushing. So don't lose those. Set those off to the side. Now with the fader in this state, you can move your slide down and start pulling the card out from inside of the fader, and you're just going to pull all this off at the same time. Just like that. Now, as we're setting this down, we don't want to set the card with the conductive plastic side down, and you don't want to set your sweeper arm with the brushes face down. You have to be very careful about both the card's fader strips and these brushes. So now we have the fader broke down to where we have the case with the shaft that the slider arm goes on and your electronic side of it. So now for cleaning, I start with my microfiber cloth. I'm going to grab the cover piece that we took off earlier, and you can see it just has all kinds of dirt and grime from years of use, and I'm just gonna, this is a dry cloth, I'm simply wiping this clean. That's all we have to do for that one. Then I'm going to do the same with the top bracket that the motor's mounted to. I'm just going to take my soft cloth and give it a couple wipes, clean all that dirt and grime off there, move my slider down to the other end, continue cleaning. Make sure to get around that gear, but be careful of it. We don't want to cause any damage or get anything stuck on that gear. Set this back down. So, to clean the card with the fader tracks on it and your brushes, you just want to use a Q-tip or a clean cotton cloth. You don't want to use a paper towel or a Kleenex or anything like that that can possibly leave any kind of oil or residue or cause any scratches to the conductive plastic layer on the card here.
Perfect.
And likewise, the only thing that P&G recommends you clean this with is lukewarm water. I'm using distilled water. If you do have a more dirty fader, think coffee spill, soda, that kind of stuff, you can use a very diluted mixture with some detergent to get the initial cleanup accomplished, and then go over it with some water to make sure there's no detergent left. So I'm going to just barely dab my Q-tip in my water, get the tip moist, and I'm going to start on my brushes. You want to go with the brushes. This way you don't want to go backwards. You don't want to damage them, bend them in any way, shape, or form. You don't use much force. Just go across the end of the brushes a couple times. Make sure the end of the contacts are clean. And then you go over to your actual card that has the fader tracks on it. You're just gonna very lightly clean these guys off with the moist end of the Q-tip. All the while I'm cleaning, I'm slightly rotating my Q-tip, so in case one side gets dirty, I'm moving to a clean side. Once I've cleaned it off, I switch to the other end, the dry clean Q-tip, and I just want to very gently go over it and make sure I'm pulling off any moisture. So that way it's nice and dry. So that's all we have to do to clean that side. Now on this side with the shaft, we want to clean the shaft in the same way. I usually use a finger to kind of hold it a little bit away. I'm going to get a new Q-tip and just lightly moisten the tip in my distilled water. So now with my moistened Q-tip, I'm just going to run it up and down the slide, all sides. Get all that dirt and grime, and I'm doing the same principle where I'm rotating the Q-tip as I'm moving it up and down the slide, and you can actually see the Q-tip getting dirtier as I go up and down it. To get the bottom on the inside, because I don't take the fader fully apart, I just run it down in like that, get the bottom side. Now you can see all the dirt we just pulled off that shaft with this Q-tip. So I'm going to lightly moisten my other side of the Q-tip and do some cleanup passes and just make sure there's nothing residual, nothing I missed, or anything that the Q-tip could have possibly redeposited from it being so dirty. Go over the whole shaft. Now the shaft is clean, I'll just go ahead and take this Q-tip before I toss it and use it to clean the dirt off the top of the body here as well. So now this body and shaft are clean, we'll set those back down. At this point in time, the only other part to look at and clean are the bushings. Inside the fader arm, there are two bushings, one on each side, and that's what makes the fader arm glide easily across the rail that we just got done cleaning. So we want to make sure there's not a buildup of dirt, debris, or even just extra lubrication in there. So we're going to take our Q-tip, be very careful to not mess with the brushes. We're just going to lightly put the Q-tip in there and spin it around a little bit to clean off the inside of that. If you look at your bushings and they seem to be extra dirty, you can cut half the head of a Q-tip off and get a Q-tip to fit all the way through the bushings. These aren't that bad, so I'm just going to lightly go over them like that. So at this point in time, here's all the clean components of the fader. Now we will start reassembly. So for reassembly, we're going to pick all these parts up. And we're going to start, if you look at the end of the shell, you can see a couple notches off on the sides. That's actually the placeholder for the card to slide in. So now we slide the card in. About halfway down, we're also going to put our arm back on its shaft and slide everything in as a unit. Make sure your card is fully seated inside the fader. So now the next step before we continue reassembly is we're going to put 1 drop of P&G lubricating oil on the shaft. We do not lubricate the brushes or the conductive plastic filaments on the bottom. The lubrication down there can degrade the feel of the fader and can attract extra dirt to cause interference between the brushes and the tracks. So now with the drop of oil on there, we're going to take our half round cover and it goes through the top of the fader arm and into the end cap. In the end cap there is actually a cutout for it. You can see it there at the top that it slides into. So you want to make sure at that other end when you're sliding that in you get into that cutout. Now the cover's on, we want to put our 2 bushings back on. Remember the 2 bushings from earlier? The one that's going to go on first is the thinner hard rubber bushing. So we're going to grab that and gently set that on to the end of the shaft. And then the second one is the thicker foam one. It's a lot more spongier. We're going to grab that and put that on the end of the shaft right behind the harder rubber one. Now with all that in place, we're going to grab our end, still with that brass nut in its recessed area. We're going to slide this on. Keep in mind to get that half round cover in its hole and make sure your wires at the bottom are coming out of their area too so you're not pinching a wire. Now we're going to start reassembling the end of this. So we're going to grab the screw and the cover, put those guys on, get it started by hand, and then screw that screw down. While you're doing that, make sure that cover stays in its recessed area and just want to get that snug. Grab your other screw, put it in the lower hole. Let's go ahead and screw that guy down. Just want to get him snug. Now we have the base of the fader put back together. We want to remount the bar at the top that holds the motor. So we want to line the hole closest to the motor up first. You're going to grab your threaded standoff we took out earlier and just get that started with finger in the hole. Get your 1/4 inch nut driver and tighten him down till he's snug. Now we're going to wrap the belt around the gear on the motor and hold that in place down here. We get our other threaded spacer shaft with the pulley on it. Put the belt on the pulley and start that threaded shaft into its hole. Once you've got it started, you can grab your quarter nut driver again. You can go ahead and tighten him down until he's snug. Verify your other end is snug as well. There we go. Now as you want to check the operation of your fader, as you're moving this up and down, I generally apply opposite pressure on the top and bottom of the fader arm for a couple swipes to make sure that one drop of oil we put on there is being dispersed everywhere around that shaft. So the whole shaft is lubricated by that one drop of oil. I'm not trying to overly exert any force, just enough to make sure the whole contact of those two bushings contact the slide. We're going to work that oil on that shaft a few times. Meanwhile, you're also wanting to check the operation. You're wanting to make sure that the belt is freely moving on this pulley on this end, and that on this end the belt is staying in contact with the gear on top of the motor and not sliding on or off at all. Once you've checked your operation and you're happy with the way it feels, get your panel back. So now we have our panel back. You reinsert the fader, the same orientation as the others. Stick the fader arm in the slot. Then with one hand, hold it where it needs to be. From the other side, you're going to help line it up. So you line up one of your screw holes. Once you have it lined up, you're going to start your screw in. Again, these are just Phillips head screws. Get your Phillips head screwdriver. Now, the first one I don't tighten all the way, so that way the fader can still move up and down, so I can line up my other screw hole down here. So once you line that one up, get it started. We're going to screw that guy in, and then make sure to come back up here to the top one that we left a little loose. Screw him in. Now as we go to the back, you want to make sure you reinsert your two plugs that we undid earlier. Again, try to just use the actual JST plugs so that way we don't cause any damage to any of the wires. And flip it over one last time and you reinstall the fader knob. Once you have it reinstalled, you can slide it up and down a couple times, make sure it's not binding, dragging anywhere, and for proper operation. And now you have a cleaned and lubricated Penny and Giles 3000 series fader. Thank you for watching.